Ryan is the host of a 90s podcast called the 90s Throwback Podcast, a show where he interviews celebrities and personalities who made a huge impact on that decade and talk about their careers. And Ryan joins us now. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
So what was it that inspired you to focus on the 90s era in particular?
I'm a 90s kid. I grew up in the 80s, so that's pretty much my decade. Like, it's what I know is where I grew up on, and I thought it'd be cool to focus on that decade. And there's like a lot of TV shows that impacted me as a kid and stuff that I like watching that I know a lot of people my age and even younger generations like watching. And I thought, this would be a cool concept, a cool idea.
And you grew up in that 90s era, as you mentioned, but have you learned even more about it through your interviews and research in preparation for them as well?
You know what? I have. Like when you're in the 90s as a kid, you look at it at a different aspect than you are now as an adult. So
yeah.
I see it from a different aspect now. It's like I learned a lot more. It's like, wow, I didn't know that. Like, just from stuff from like some of the interviews I had on, there was one recently I did with my latest episode I did a couple weeks ago with Dawn Lewis from A Different World. I had her on, and there are things I didn't know about her. Like, she had this whole big career I didn't even know about. Like,
what kind of topics do you prefer to focus on? Do you like the TV and movie an actor guest or music, or do you like to have it quite broad?
I like them quite broad. I'm open to, I like them all. Like, sometimes I'll have an actress from a TV show on. I've had an author on a couple times. I've had a singer on once or twice. I have a little bit of everybody on. I think it's good to have good variety on these type of shows because there's something for everybody.
And how do you go about selecting them? What's the process of thinking who you're going to have on? Do you just think, ooh, famous 90s person, let's just ask everybody? Or is there a bit of a process of going, I haven't had an author on in a while, I might get another one?
It's a little bit of everything. Like, okay, I'll say like I just like just randomly, like sometimes I'll just be watching, like, Netflix, you have those old shows. I was like, oh, that'd be a pretty good guest to ask on. And I just ask. There's whole different processes how I ask or whatever, but there's not really a set process. Like, anything that comes to my mind, I just maybe once a week I'll brainstorm, say, who could I get on? Who could I get on? It's like, oh, that'll be a good idea. And I send out my feelers, and if they like it, they'll go back to me. If it's not for them or it's not like busy, they'll say they'll try again another time. It's like touch and go. So it's like a lot of stuff. Yeah,
that's the thing. Nobody ever says no. They're either too busy or never reply.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If they reply, it's actually a good thing. At least they read your message.
Yes, that's the thing. And do you have any particular memorable moments from some of your interviews with celebrities and personalities that you've spoken to on the show?
I have some good favorite guests that I have interviewed, but before I said that, there's one in particular guest that I wanted to have on, but it never happened. And it's a funny situation why it never happened. You familiar with the TV show Family Matters with Steve Urkel?
Yeah, I think I've heard of it.
The dad, Reginald Johnson, he was Carl Winslow. He was originally in the early stages of the podcast. He was supposed to be a guest on the show, and what had happened was the day of the show, he was supposed to call in or whatever. He never called in, and I talked to his agent or manager or whatever afterwards to find out what happened. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. He fell asleep." So the interview never happened because he got new management shortly after. So it was kind of hard to get a hold of him after that. But he was supposed to come on, but he fell asleep. But I had one of the Power Rangers on. That was memorable. Like, I grew up as a big Power Rangers fan. I had Catherine Sutherland on. That was pretty cool. And I'm a big wrestling fan, and I'm a big WCW fan. Had Eric Bischoff on. That was pretty cool.
That's a bit of a relief, though, that he fell asleep, because I thought you were going to say he died that very morning.
Oh, God, no. No, he fell asleep, and then I don't know if his alarm didn't go off or what happened, or he forgot the actual time of the thing. And there's another situation that happened that's kind of similar. It happened like a couple months ago. Are you familiar with the TV show Perfect Strangers? It's like an 80s, 90s show.
I don't know.
I'm not sure if you might not be familiar with it. It was a big show on like TGIF. I had Rebecca Arthur on, doing how we're doing right now. We did the interview through Zoom, did everything, and found out afterwards, for whatever reason, the interview never recorded.
Oh, no.
So all that prep, all that time, and it never recorded.
Yeah.
But you learn, you go. Because I was still kind of new to Zoom at the time, but I'm a lot more familiar with it now. So it's probably partially my fault. I probably hit the wrong button.
And how did you handle that? Did you just decide to leave it, or have the embarrassing thing of contacting her to do it again?
Well, I did. That's the funny thing. I did reach out to her people, I think, in her personally a little bit afterwards, saying it didn't happen. For whatever reason, can we do it again? And I never heard anything. So I was like, okay, this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I'll probably reach out in a few months. It was probably got busy or something, but I just thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah. Now, you're thinking of expanding the podcast into the 80s and noughties era. How are you going to go about that? Because at the end of the day, it's still going to be a 90s podcast, right?
Yeah, it is, because to its core, it's still going to be 90s. But I get some requests they like 80s. Like I there's some 80s shows that I like too. Like I was born in the 80s, so I kind of have a little bit of a memory of the 80s. But like I said, more 90s and 2000s. There were some good shows, but I've gotten some requests. So like we'll focus on it. Like see, even some of the guests, I've had on, like some of the shows they were on even started in, like they were more known in the 90s, but they started in the 80s too. I had April O'Neil on from the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. She was a guest on one time, and the show started in 1987, even though it was also as big in the 90s. So some of the guests I covered, they covered the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So I was like, why not just cover all three? But like primarily, I'm still going to cover the 90s though, because I think, like for me, that's how the podcast started. That's where the core is. But I'm definitely interested in expanding. Like I said, I get requests all the time to like cover 80s and 2000s stuff. So I think going forward, later on this year, we're going to start expanding into that a little bit more.
I guess it's a generational thing. Like you, people mainly grew up in the 90s, but that's not the only time that they grew up. They also grew up in the 80s and sometimes the 90s.
I was a little kid in the 80s. Like I maybe remember 1 or 2 years in the 80s, by like 3-4 years. I remember a little bit of stuff. 2000s, I was more of a teenager. Just like I still have fond memories, but like it's not as fun as when you're actually, a kid. Like, like you have this more of an imagination about stuff. Like it's more magical. I can't explain it. But
well, what's coming up in the not too distant future? Have you got any exciting guests that are in the diary?
You know what? We are in talks of a couple guests. I don't have anything confirmed, almost confirmed. I don't want to spoil it right now, but I would say if you're a fan of some of the 90s shows like A Different World or a Cosby Show, we have some guests in the near future, coming on as guests.
Sounds exciting. And in the meantime, where are all the places that we're able to find your podcast? Is it just everywhere?
Anywhere you download your favorite podcast, we're on there, like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, Amazon Music, FM Radio. We're not on Blog Talk anymore. TuneIn Radio.
Yes.
Yeah, any app that has a podcast, you'll find us.
Yeah, there's no excuse.
No excuse. Just download it, check it out, see if it's for you. I'm sure this has to probably be at least one guest someone probably be interested in hearing. But yeah, it's a little bit for everybody if they want to check it out.
Yeah, excellent. Well, many thanks for talking to us today. It's been great having you on.
Thanks. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.